Explaining football to the friend who's just there for the nachos? Hard. Tailgating from home like a pro with snacks and drinks everyone will love? An easy win. And with Instacart helping deliver the snack time MVPs to your door, you're ready for the game in as fast as 30 minutes. So you never miss a play or lose your seat on the couch or have to go head-to-head for the last chicken wing. Shop game day faves on Instacart and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 grocery orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Other fees and terms apply.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Welcome to the Spotify Top 10 podcast, The Traitor. My name's Matthew. I'm a writer working in unscripted TV development, and I am a 100% faithful fan of the TV phenomenon, The Traitors. Most episodes of the podcast deep dive into individual episodes of The Traitors from around the world, but The Traitor also features interviews with contestants from the shows, including cast members from UK Seasons 1 and 2, US Season 1, Australia 1 and 2, and The Traitors Canada. Most recently, I've interviewed 6 major contestants from The Traitors New Zealand Season 2. Then I had a little break, and now I'm back one final time. Although I did say last time was the final time. I'm sorry. Because I am joined by the winner of New Zealand Season 2. Spoiler alert, switch off now if you don't want to know who won. It's Bailey! Bailey, I want to say how you going. Is that just an Aussie thing? Is that also a New Zealand thing?
Oh, absolutely. You can say that in New Zealand. Yeah, I'm going great. How are you going?
I'm going great as well. It's a rainy morning in London. How is it where you are in New Zealand?
Oh, the sun's gone down here, so it's just kind of a cold spring evening, really.
Oh, cold. I don't think of New Zealand as cold. I just think of it as like this nice, lovely, sunny place. Okay.
Oh, I wish it was like that all the time.
Yeah, that's silly because and my reference for New Zealand is Lord of the Rings, and I just think of also like snowy mountains, so it must be cold at sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, some places, sometimes.
Well, thank you for joining us on The Trader. It's such a treat to have the winner of New Zealand Season 2 on the podcast because, I mean, that season of the show is like a top tier entry in the Traitors franchise. Absolutely loved it. Were you a Traitors fan before you were on the show? Had you seen it? Did you know what it was?
Yeah, so my mum had got me onto the Traitors last year with the UK versions, and I was obsessed. I just thought it was so good. Although watching the first season of the UK, all I could think was, why are these people crying all the time? Like, why? And then I got the opportunity to go on it, and I realized why people are crying all the time. Like, it is intense.
Yeah, I can only imagine. It's funny you say that. I'm on various sort of Facebook groups dedicated to the Traitors in different countries. And in all of the other, like the US one and the Australian Facebook group, the most common thing people post is, why are all these UK people crying? Like, like all the time.
So crazy. It was so crazy. I'm like, surely you just go in, you just play the game, and you just see how well you do, you know? But no, yeah, I fell in love with the game. I thought it was so cool, and I loved that it was normal people. I loved that it was just kind of everyday people. It wasn't based on like physical strength or anything. Like it was just like a fun kind of psychological game, which is exactly what it is. And I just loved it. I just fell in love with it.
Yeah. And then you ended up on it yourself.
I did. Would have never have. This time last year, you could not have told me. Very, very odd, but so lucky, so lucky.
Now, I have so much more to ask you about your epic part in this season, but before we say anything else, we must set up our podcast game. This is the Traitor. The mission for Bailey and I from here on in is to tell a lie to one another at some point during our chat. The lie has to be a fabrication, a made-up fact, big or small, about the traitors or about ourselves or anything at all. For example, I could lie to Bailey and say that I hired a genealogist during my research and discovered that we are actually distant cousins. However, my lie couldn't be that I think I would have been a better contestant on the show. That would be a fake opinion and a very obvious fake opinion because I don't think I could have won like Bailey did. So we're looking for fake facts rather than pretend thoughts and feelings. Bailey, are you ready to don your traitor's cloak once more, metaphorically speaking, and deceive me?
I am.
That means our mini game of betrayal begins right now. So,
Ooh.
firstly, Bailey, I'm going to get it out of the way. I'm going to put
Yeah.
my hands up and be honest.
Hmm.
For the because the listeners might know this and they might be ashamed of me. For the whole first episode, I couldn't tell you and Molly apart. I'm really sorry that in the first podcast episode, I kept saying, "Oh, it's either Molly or Bailey," and I don't know who. I was just learning everyone's names, and I just wanted
Look,
to put it right out there and say to your face, "I'm very sorry."
that's absolutely fine. I have always, wherever I've been in a job, just anywhere, I've always had at least one other person who I'm confused with. So it's just kind of the classic average white blonde hair girl kind of situation, I think.
Okay, I'm very, very sorry. However, actually,
That's
looking
okay.
back on my episode notes, by the end of episode one, I had figured it out because there was a specific scene that I wanted to ask you about, and I
Ooh,
asked. It was a scene where you were trying to talk to Mike, and Mike was really giving nothing back by the looks of the edit. Now we've had
okay.
Mike on the podcast; he's absolutely lovely. Mike
Yeah.
had no memory of this scene whatsoever, so gave me no insight. Was Mike as difficult to read or as introverted as he seemed at the beginning? Like there's a sort of carefully edited scene where it looks like you're trying to talk to him and he's just saying absolutely nothing. How was it in reality with Mike?
Um, I did find him quite introverted and quite quiet. And I couldn't tell you what scene this was exactly and whether or not, he was the person I was aiming to talk to, and what happened. But he just generally, yeah, he was quite quiet and introverted. But in saying that, everyone was lovely. There was never anyone who I felt was like snubbing me or, ignoring me or anything like that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And of course, Mike was a traitor and you were a faithful at that point. How did you feel about not being chosen as a traitor straight away at the beginning of the game?
Do you know what? I told Paul that I was 50-50. I told everyone going into this game. They ask you, in your application, everything. Do you want to be a traitor? Do you want to be a faithful? And I could find such good reasons for both sides that I was like, I'm so 50-50. I'm going to be honest, I'm 50-50. And it sounds so dumb and like a scapegoat kind of answer. But um, when I went in and talked to Paul on that first day and you discussed, what would you do if you won and etc. I I walked out of that meeting thinking, I've aced this and I'm going to be a traitor. And I convinced myself until we went into that selection banishment, I was convinced I was going to walk out a traitor. And when I didn't, I was gutted. And now in hindsight, I'm like, obviously, like I am not theatrical enough. I was never going to be a day one traitor. So I was really, really gutted. I was so sad about it. But then on the other hand, I was like, no, no, no. Okay, you got to look at it with a positive spin. You don't have to lie. You can now just be yourself. And you
Yeah.
just have to enjoy the ride now and try your best.
Yeah. And of course, at the end, it all changed and it all worked out. But
It all worked out.
we'll get there. As the game progressed, then we saw players like Ben sort of figure out who some of the traitors really might be. So Ben figured out pretty early on that Jane was probably a traitor, and he was right.
Yes.
I have
Yes.
a two-part question about this.
Okay.
Firstly, who did you genuinely suspect very early on? Who did you think the traitors were?
Yep. So I wrote this in my diary on day one, and my top three were Jane, Mike, and Andrew.
Okay.
They were my top three. And now looking back, obviously at the time you just don't know.
Yeah.
But as soon as I knew, I was so proud of myself. Um, and it's funny because it didn't make the cut, but I was one of the first people that I had heard spit out a name, just like put out anyone's name on the first day. And it wasn't because I thought they were a traitor. I was just genuinely thinking who here would make a good selection as a
Yeah.
traitor? Like if I was a producer, who would I pick,
Yeah.
essentially?
Yeah.
And I said Whitney. And I was in a room of people who just all kind of sat there in silence. And I was like, what have I done? What have I done? This is day one. I've thrown a name out. I'm gonna be out tonight. Like this is it. And I went to Whitney that night and I told her what I'd said. And I was like, Whitney, I don't think you are a traitor, but I need you to know I said this because I just think you'd be a good one. But I have no evidence. I don't think you are. So
Yeah.
I was almost on the money for all of
Yeah.
it.
And I bet she panicked when she heard that.
Yeah, I know. I actually haven't spoken to her about it, but I would love to hear what she was thinking.
Yeah, so you had pretty good instincts early on then. You thought about Jane and Mike. And
Yeah.
I guess the second part of my question is, did you ever think you might do something like Ben was planning? Like where you would have in mind who a traitor was, but you wouldn't tell anyone and you might just keep it close to you and sort of form a secret alliance with that person that they don't know about?
No, it was never a plan of mine to form an alliance with a trader.
Okay.
But it was definitely on my mind to keep people's names close.
Hmm.
Um, unless someone I felt like I could really trust put out a name and I could bounce off, theories with them.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely cases where I was bouncing someone else's name around, but in front of someone who I suspected. So I was trying to tone it down a bit. But no, I don't think I would have ever formed like an alliance with one.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Mm.
And you mentioned Whitney there. But
Mm.
by the time it gets to episode 5, Whitney does then get banished. And in that episode, you seemed to then have her sussed. What made you change from thinking, oh, she would make a good traitor to actually thinking, oh, she really might be one?
Whitney. Do you know what? I was not sold on Whitney as a trader.
Okay.
I agreed with what Mike was saying because Mike had a thing that happened and I'd seen it happen with the hoof and the
Yeah.
lungs
Yeah.
and that was something that had happened. Everyone knew. So I kind of was going with his train of thought, but I don't think I've actually ever spoken about this. Something I found it super embarrassing and I was absolutely terrified that they'd include it in the edit. Thank God they didn't. I was just mortified. But now I feel like it's been enough time. I'm big enough to say what happened. But I had suspicions whether Mike and Britt were a couple on like day 2. And so I had this suspicion and it was floating around and I kind of kept asking them about their lives. And then they kind of came together on this Whitney idea. And this whole thing happened so I thought Brett was married to Mike, and because I thought Brett was married to a builder, to a carpenter.
Yeah.
Then at the round table, it came up. Someone asked, it must have been Whitney, asked Brett about her husband, and Whitney threw it back, saying, "You guys, I think you guys might be together." And Britt saying, no, 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 my husband's a chiropractor. And in that moment, I had thought her husband was a carpenter the whole time. And in that moment, I was like, I don't trust Britt. I don't trust Mike. I don't trust this situation. I'm not voting for Whitney. Okay. Even though I kind of the whole day had been like, yeah, I can see where Mike's coming from. I can see it. And in that last minute, I panicked. And that's the night I voted for Noel because I knew that Donna would be voting for Noel. So I was like, okay, at least I'll have one, ally at the table, someone else also voting. So yeah, I wasn't sold on the Whitney thing. It was kind of early days where, I mean, it's episode 5, but you also are going off so little. And it's so tricky. It's really so much harder than it looks when you watch it.
Yeah, I bet. And that's exactly what I was going to ask you about, was why you switched to Noel. And that's interesting to hear you say, well, you knew someone else was going to vote for Noel. Was that a tactic throughout the game to think about, to not stand out with your votes and be like the single person voting for someone?
Yeah, it was. It was especially in the first round. There was no way I was going to go out on a limb. And then kind of that night, I think when I went into a banishment table and my head was so frazzled, I was just kind of scrambling to think, okay, I need to just vote with someone else. But I only would ever vote for someone who was slightly on my, suspicion list. There was no way I was going to vote for someone that I truly didn't think could possibly be a traitor. I just thought that wasn't quite fair. However, in saying that, episode 1 with Terry.
Yes.
So Terry and I, we sat next to each other and we were next to each other in the first, selection of the Traitors. And he had turned to me and said, Jane, look at Jane. And everything he said about Jane, I'd noticed as well. And me and him the whole first day were like, Jane, Jane, Jane. And so they ask you on day 1, like, who's your most trusted person today? Like, you've only known these people for about 6 hours. And I said, Terry. And I truly, truly trusted Terry. I didn't think he was a traitor at all. I did vote for him, though, because Terry won a shield. And me and Terry had been the two who were saying Jane, Jane, Jane to people. And I knew he couldn't be murdered. And then so I did like panicked. So he would be safe. And so I didn't want to vote for Jane, go out on a limb voting for Jane with Terry, knowing that he couldn't be killed because then it would
get murdered
to me. Yeah. So I kind of jumped on that bandwagon of like, I'm jumping with this group going, Terry. Yeah. I'm so sorry, Terry.
Well, you have to save yourself. That's what the game's about. So
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky figuring out your votes, honestly. Yes. And it changes from breakfast to lunch to dinner.
Sure.
Yeah.
You then sussed out Mike a couple of episodes. Well, by the sounds of it, you'd already sussed out Mike, but a couple of episodes later, he gets banished. What turned the tide on Mike? What made it safe to vote for Mike at that point?
At that point, so after the Whitney drama, and Whitney went, then Mike turned on me thinking I had, been a little liar, which I'm standing by. I did not lie. I just told Whitney something she already knew.
Yes.
So he kind of came for me after that. And then I was just like, I don't trust you for all of these reasons. And then I started looking, I would write down every night who people voted for, and as much as I could remember. And I would, you pick up on patterns, and I would notice some kind of like weird discrepancies with Mike's voting. And I was like, okay, you're looking for anything, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of just another tick, and the pulsating vein and the going red at the banishment table and that. And it sounds so icky to say. I feel like it's just a human reaction, but you have to go off everything. And then he came for me, and I was like, that's dodgy as. But then it was the day of the mission where the winning, or those few who got left at the puzzle pieces, tied up at the
Sure.
gags,
Yeah.
they got to decide whether it was like banishment or murder. And so there was not going to be a murder. And I was like, great, I'm going to take my opportunity and go for Mike because
Yeah.
I can't be killed tonight. So I'm just going to try. Unfortunately, no one jumped on board. But that's okay. That's okay. They all had to live with their decision of banishing Stephen. So
Now we're getting to sort of one of the most important parts of the season, which is your recruitment. So I've
yes.
various questions about this one particular part of the game, including lots of questions from listeners.
Uh-huh.
So when you got summoned that night, what did you think was happening when you were asked to, in the middle of the night, come outside?
See Paul and a traitor under the
Yes.
moon. I knew it was coming for me that night, and I wrote in my diary. There was obviously a gap between like leaving the banishment and then coming up there,
Yeah.
and I'd written in my diary who's most likely to be recruited tonight. We're all assuming there's one traitor left, and I wrote my name and Mark's name. So it didn't surprise me when Mark was also there.
Yeah.
And I was so petrified of being recruited because I said the only two ways I want to leave this game is either winning as a faithful or being banished as a faithful and getting to turn around and be like, shame suckers, like I was a faithful and you got it wrong. So I was petrified. I was so scared, but I couldn't stop laughing. You can see it in the show. I just could not stop laughing because I was just like, this is unbelievable. This is classic my life. Like, of course. But to have to plead our cases, that made me, I blacked out. I literally had no idea what Mark had said, didn't hear about the note, could barely understand what I was saying. Mine didn't even make sense. I was out of it. And then obviously Jane picked Mark. And I was just like, cool, it's been good. It's been a good ride. See everyone. But no, Mark switched it up.
Yes. What did you think of that? What did you think of what Mark did? He just opted to get out.
Do you know what? It took a lot of discussing it with other people. Obviously, once all my friends and family saw it, and then they had their opinions, and they all loved it and loved the decision. Obviously, because it meant I was still there. But that night, I almost felt like a rage at Mark, like he'd set me up.
Yeah.
I was a bit like, screw you, Mark. Like, do you not think I can do this? And now you've turned the tides on me as a kind of, I don't know, I guess like I felt set up.
Yeah.
And then obviously hearing other people's perspectives and Mark's perspective, it totally made sense. And I was very selfish in my thinking that it was all about me. But yeah, it made sense. And it was such a like an iconic Traitors moment.
Yeah. And again, Mark's been on the podcast, and Mark, in true Mark style, he wore like a cloak to our Zoom call. It wasn't like a traitor's
Of
cloak,
course.
but from like D&D or something like that.
Yeah.
So I have listener questions about recruitment and things surrounding that. So I'm going to
Mhm.
ask a few of them right now. I have one from Joe. Joe has been on the podcast before. He's hosted with me. Joe asks, "How was it being picked midway through?" And I think Joe's right. As I got the impression, you didn't want to be a traitor, but Joe says you slipped into the role really well. So just basically, how was it halfway through the game to have everything turned upside down?
It was tricky. It was so tricky because I've said this so many times, but I pretty much trained myself into these patterns of being a faithful,
Yeah,
essentially, and um, just monitoring what I was doing at every time I spoke, everywhere I looked, I was trying not to be dodgy as a faithful, and I was just trying to continue that. So, um, in that way. I'd kind of set myself up for it to be as easy as possible, essentially, if I could just keep doing those things. Um, but you have so much adrenaline on that first walking into breakfast,
Yeah.
and the gasp, when I find out Mark's gone. And I've seen people being like, "Oh, great acting, Bailey." But I covered my mouth because I was so certain I was going to smile in that moment, and someone would obviously be like, "Well, that's really strange."
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. It was more, I think, tricky in I didn't know how I was going to do it, and then once I'd done it for a day, I was like, okay, just keep doing this, keep
Sure.
it up. There's no suspicion yet, as far as I know. Yeah.
The next question is from someone called AB Allen on Instagram, and they've asked, this is an interesting one. Were there any traitors from other seasons you tried to emulate after recruitment?
No. No, there wasn't because really I'd only watched like UK 1 and 2 and New Zealand 1.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those traders, were traders from the get-go,
Yeah.
and they were really into the like conniving trader like energy of it. And that just isn't me. I was just more like, well, let's see how we go. This will be fun. Um, and so, no, do you know what? The person I was trying to, bring the energy from was Maddie from the UK
Yes.
season 1.
Yes, yes.
I was trying to bring like that kind of just like trying to be onto ideas, but also not having a clue in the best way possible.
Yes. Detective
I
Maddie.
love, yeah, I freaking love Maddie. So I was trying to bring that energy, but no traders, no
Okay.
traders.
And Matthew, who runs the I Analyze the Traitors account on Instagram that I talk about all the time, asks, and maybe you've already answered this, but I'm going to ask it for Matthew anyway. He says, amazing job, Bailey. What is the hardest part of being a recruited traitor?
Ooh, what's the hardest part of being recruited? I think it's the hardest part is just going in the next day with a massive secret.
Yeah.
And part of it for me was just wanting to tell someone what had happened, because it was so bonkers that I just had this crazy story to tell someone, and I obviously couldn't. But a lot of it is just, yes, trying to just carry on as normal. And like Siali said, it feels like you've got a big sign on your forehead, like
Yeah.
screaming traitor. It kind of is a bit like that. So, yeah, it's tricky feeling like you almost have to be even more hyper aware than I was feeling as a faithful, which I felt like was pretty hyper aware, but even more so.
Yeah.
If your foot twitches the wrong way, people might think you're dodgy.
Yeah.
Explaining football to the friend who's just there for the nachos? Hard. Tailgating from home like a pro with snacks and drinks everyone will love? An easy win. And with Instacart helping deliver the snack time MVPs to your door, you're ready for the game in as fast as 30 minutes. So you never miss a play or lose your seat on the couch or have to go head to head for the last chicken wing. Shop game day faves on Instacart and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 grocery orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Other fees and terms apply.
It took a lifetime to find the person you want to marry. Finding the perfect engagement ring is a lot easier. At BlueNile.com, you can find or design the ring you've always dreamed of with help from Blue Nile's jewelry experts who are on hand 24/7 to answer questions. And the ease and convenience of shopping online. For a limited time, get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more with code LISTEN at BlueNile.com. That's $50 off with code LISTEN at BlueNile.com.
And really soon, I mean, that very first day, you pretty much had to also contend with the fact that Jane was then about to be banished immediately. So, did you intend to have to? Did you intend or expect to have to turn on Jane so quickly after your recruitment?
I didn't I don't think I expected to, but I wasn't upset too,
Mhm.
because I had been saying from day one she was a traitor.
Yes.
And I had discussed it with like Donna, and I had tried to get her out on day two, but or day three. But you know, it's I'm happy it kind of played out the way it played out because it was so natural. And I think that was a really good part of my strategy. I say it now, but putting out so many names as a faithful and like with reason, so that when it came to being a trader, I could just run with those.
Yeah.
And Jane was obviously one of my top people from the start. So it wasn't unexpected, but it also was like, holy moly, I'm the sole trader now.
Yeah, sure. And of course, then I was going to ask you about your next recruitment, but there's another couple of questions from listeners. One is from Harry Ollie 94 on Instagram, who says, you say you wanted to win with Donna, so this is kind of about the next step. Why didn't you recruit her instead of Ciali?
Well, okay. When in my head, only one trader could win.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I actually don't know. I've never seen a season where there's been multiple traders. I don't know what happens. I don't know what could happen in the New Zealand one. So in my head, it was I win as a trader by myself or I win as a faithful with my friends. So it wasn't a choice because I knew I didn't want to pick someone so close to me that then I would have to sabotage them in the end, you know?
Sure. Okay.
And I feel like that would come across really strange if, you know, you've been buddy, you've said you've trusted this person the whole way, and then day 12, you turn around and claim they're a traitor. Which I kind of did with Donna a little bit. But I chose Ciali. But he was just kind of the perfect positioning to me in my mind of not too close to me, but we had also had some chats and we were kind of on the same page about certain ideas about other people when I was a faithful. And he also wasn't someone who I thought could like turn around and take me out, which I thought probably Utah would be able to do. Utah had huge sway. And Ciali at that point, I hadn't seen him have huge sway over the group. So it was kind of that perfect middle positioning to me I was close enough to them, but not too close. And yeah, they were kind of in the same sort of level that I was.
Yeah, sure.
Group positionings. Yeah.
There's another question that you kind of already given us the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. So this is Matthew from I Analyze the Traitors again. He asks, you've explained why you didn't pick Donna, but Matthew was wondering, was Donna not seduced to be a traitor because she was unlikely to accept? Could that be another reason as well?
Yeah, it didn't cross my mind. I guess you kind of do think like, oh, can I just keep asking people who I don't think would say yes, you know, and especially when you're blackmailing, and then boom, you've lost someone, then you like just whip people out of the group. But no, it wasn't that. And I know that it shows on the edit that I think Donna says, well, Bailey told me she would never accept it. I think I always said to people, I would be really worried about how I would act. Like, I don't know if I could do it and like do the role justice. And also I think I'd probably said, I want to win as a faithful. Like that's how I'd want to win.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'd ever say like, no, I would turn it down. There's no way I'm leaving this game before I become a trader. I never said that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The next question is more of a silly one, just from my curious brain that keeps thinking about this one thing. And I think I asked Noel or somebody else about it already, I'm not sure. The mission where you were kidnapped and you were in the barn and you had to stab the mannequins. I found it very confusing to watch. It seems like there were lots of rules maybe off camera that we don't quite see. At one point you realize you have a key in your hand that you're not really supposed to have. And you sort of throw it on the floor surreptitiously. Why didn't you tell everybody else, oh, I have a key here? Why did you do it so quietly?
Um, so I did get told to throw the key that we could in the rules. We could throw it. I think I wasn't allowed to throw it like in the circle, but
Okay.
I could throw it as close as I kind of could to the circle, if I'm right. So that was like the rule. Uh, and I think it was just so much chaos going on with people, trying to unlock and then people running around and that yeah, I just feel like it was kind of, I guess we were almost waiting until we needed someone to be desperate for it, and then we'd be like,
Okay.
oh, it's on the ground, it's on the ground. It was all such a kerfuffle, and it's honestly hard watching it back because I'm also like, wait, did that really happen like that? Um, it was all a bit odd, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it was a
Okay.
big faux pas.
That's fine. That's fine. And in that same episode, right after you had just recruited Ciale, other players immediately started to then talk about him and be suspicious of him. I mean, how much of a panic was that you just recruited him and now everyone's looking at him?
That was so stressful because I thought I'd made such a solid choice. I was honestly so set. I was like, I've picked someone who also doesn't have any suspicion on them right now, or another reason why I chose him. And it was just bizarre because not once had I heard his name come up. And I was like, he has done something that I have completely missed at breakfast. It started at breakfast. And I guess it was that the reaction to, Utah being murdered wasn't quite enough for some people. But yeah, I was panicking. I was panicking, but I was also like, oh, well, at least there's not suspicion on me.
I have a couple of questions about Ben. You
Huh?
recruited Ben with Ciale.
Mhm.
Firstly,
Yep.
Why was Ben the choice? Why did you recruit him?
Do you know what? We recruited Ben because we were struggling to pick. And in the end, I was like, well, Ben did say at the banishment tonight that if you've entered this game, you've obviously come into it being prepared to be a traitor.
Yeah.
He's like, so because obviously at that point people were questioning if there's obviously been a recruitment, who would accept it, who would not. And he's saying, well, we should all be open to the idea of being a traitor because we all come in here. And we were struggling so hard that we threw that out there and we're like, yeah, okay, let's go Ben. Let's go Ben. And I guess at that point, his group, his little bubble, I call it his bubble, but I felt like that was kind of popped ultimately. Like
Yeah.
Shane had gone, and then I think Molly had a lot of suspicion from different people. Well, she had enough points against her that I knew she was kind of going to be next up on the chopping block. Um, so yeah, I felt like his bubble was really fading. So he was kind of just like on his lonesome, knew that he'd accept, and then kind of knew he didn't have that backup anymore after the fact. So he just kind of, unfortunately, he was our little scapegoat.
And of course, poor Ben only lasted a day. He dropped a little hint as he was being banished. He said that he'd only been on the job for a day. Was that, did that worry you that he had thrown that little comment in there? Might that have been a problem?
It did a little bit, but I was really scared of people's, final speeches and what they were going to come out with.
Yeah,
And I knew it could have been so much worse. So
sure.
I was a bit like, thank God. But it was good because it kind of gives you another talking point, right? And people go, oh, one day, who would have picked Ben? And then obviously he was getting a bit closer to Kat at that point. So you can kind of bounce off things. But yeah, it was a little bit of a clue, I guess, but it is what it is. It could have been so much worse.
Okay, yes, that is very true. And we've seen worse in one or two other seasons. So
Yes, we should have.
now, a really difficult round table because you had to vote for Donna, and you seemed genuinely upset by having to play the game that way. Were these genuine tears of guilt, or was this all an act?
Yeah, so it wasn't all an act, but I can't act, and so, but I can cry, and I can think about things that make me sad and get upset about them, and then once I start, I don't stop. So, I had kind of worked myself up thinking about like hurting Donna, so that was all super genuine, and I kind of just like honed in on that in the banishment and it was awful because I was obviously using Donna's great idea back against her.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just, I don't know, trying to set something up. I knew no one else would really vote for Donna. But I had said pretty like for days beforehand, I'd told Donna a million times, I will never vote for Noel. I trust Noel. I'd said it as a faithful, and I was not going to change that. So Noel was not having my vote. And then yeah, it was definitely I do feel really bad for Noel. And I could just, I don't know, I'm a big empath, I guess. And so I can make myself sad by thinking about sad things. But it was definitely a bit of a ploy to bring some emotion to it at the
Sure.
same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we reach the finale. I have, I think, one final listener question. This is from Alexandra on Instagram, who asks, did you really want to go to the end with Cialy and split the money?
You know what? It was my first instinct. I'm such a terrible trader. But yes, it was my first gut instinct was I could see Sally and me at the end. Like, this would be great. This would be so nice. I'd love to share the money with him. And then you kind of go the next day and you're like, okay, suspicions on Cialy. Well, maybe we could get him out and I could win this by myself. And then you think, yeah, Bailey, you're literally playing the traitors. Like you have to be a little bit more like conniving.
Sure.
But no, honestly, it was my first instinct.
Yeah. Okay. And when Paul revealed, I think it's when Cialy is banished, Paul reveals that no one from now on will reveal their status. Did you already know that was going to happen? And secondly, did you think that was a help or a hindrance to your game?
I had no idea that was going to happen, and I was stoked. I was so, so happy. My first instinct was, yay, thank God. Now no one knows and everyone's more confused. Um, I guess that people have, said, well, I was really worried for you when that happened, and I'm like, oh, I didn't see it that way. I just thought, well, no one knows now. So people are going to keep guessing, try and get all their suspicions out at the fire pit. So yeah, it was great. It was great. Loved that little move.
Yes. And the game then basically comes down to Donna's vote when it's just you, her, and Jason. Like, this is kind of the moment that's going to decide whether a traitor or faithful win the season. Before Donna turns over her slate, and of course she votes for Jason, did you think there was a possibility she might write your name down and that it was all over?
100%. Yeah, I definitely. That last day, you're all doing your own missions. You have breakfast together. Then the rest of the day, you're out on your missions, and you just don't spend a lot of time together. And the vibe, a couple of days earlier, when the group is so small, I think Joe might have said, look, guys, let's just enjoy today. Let's go out and have like so much fun. It's getting a bit sad. It's getting a bit somber. Let's turn it around. And we just had the best day. And then you get 2 days further and it's the last day, and the atmosphere was dark, like really, really dark. And the whole mood had changed. And even just, looking at Donna, I couldn't read her anymore. And I just thought, I don't think she's on my side anymore. And at that point, before she turned her thing around, I was just standing there. It was freezing cold. And I was just standing there saying in my head, whatever will be, will be, it's fine. But you feel sick. Like it's so yuck when you just don't know what's about to unfold. And I truly didn't know where it was going to go. And then I saw the J as she turned her board around, and I was like, I've won. I've won.
And I rewatched that last little bit a few days ago just to sort of remind myself and get ready to
Yeah.
talk to you.
Yeah.
It must be, you can see how upset Donna really is. It's awful watching it. How difficult is it to celebrate your win versus feeling sad for your friend? Like that must have been so tough.
It was horrible. It was so sad because your brain's literally split in half of holy moly, I've just won. I've just won. I've just done it. And then the other half is, oh my God, I'm about to tell Donna I'm a traitor. And she's going to be absolutely devastated. And it really is, don't smile too much because that's awful. Don't cry too much because don't be ungrateful. You've just won 73 grand.
Yeah.
It's so, you look bad either way.
Yeah.
And yeah, people are like, I've never seen someone so sad to win this much money. And I'm like, the worst case scenario for me just played out. And I saw it coming, I saw
Yeah.
it coming from a mile away. And yeah, it was awful. And all credit to Donna. She's been the greatest, supporter and the best second place person I could have ever hoped for.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
did you buy a car and go on holiday like you told Paul?
Do you know what? I did buy a car, and my new car is called Connie, which is short for Conclave. And I've also got a Christmas winter holiday booked. We're coming over to Europe in December.
Oh,
So yeah,
fantastic.
that's been a little dream of mine for a while. So yeah, I just had to do it, make a few dreams come true.
Excellent. And you know, this is a really huge question to ask at the very end, but you said to Paul right at the end you had just wanted to come for an adventure, do a couple of missions. How do you think you pulled it all off? How did you do it?
Ultimately, I think I just went in as me, and I wasn't trying to do anything except for like play the best game of the traders that I could. I wasn't there to, become a reality TV star. I wasn't there to put my theater background on show. And I wasn't there for any other reason except for to have fun, I guess. And I think I knew going in that just my personality is suited to a game like this, where
Yeah.
you can kind of hide when you need to hide and speak when you need to speak and make friendships when you need to make friendships.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think ultimately I was just lucky that I have a personality like this and I enjoyed the game and I liked watching it and I applied. Yeah, and I think you've just got to, it's a game about observing other people.
Yeah.
So if people think they're skilled at that, they should definitely go on Traders and give it a shot.
Yeah. And I mean you played one of the best games as a traitor I've seen. From our perspective, you really didn't put a foot wrong. You made it all the way to the end with like two or three votes maybe throughout the season. You played pretty much half the season as a traitor. So it was amazing TV, amazing traitor from what I can see. So I loved watching you on the show.
Oh, thanks.
We have a couple of things left. We do have to finish the game that we've been playing, of course. Before we get there, Bailey, where can we find you online if people want to track you down? Not like stalk you or anything, but if they just want to see what you're up to.
Yeah, well, my Instagram is just a Bailey Kench. That's just my normal Instagram where you just see a bit of my life. But I'm a wedding videographer and my company is Happy House Films. So you can also find that on Instagram if anyone's interested.
Lovely. Now, and I'll put links to those in the episode description.
Amazing.
We've been playing the Trader Traitor. Which means we've been trying to deceive one another throughout this interview. Bailey,
Mm.
have you lied to me at any point?
I have actually.
Okay, I have also lied to you.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
d- I'll start us off. I'm gonna guess what
Okay.
you may have lied about.
Okay.
I wrote down a couple of options.
Ooh,
Hi.
we good. Hi.
Sorry,
Did this little weird thing again.
happened again. Okay, it's recording again. I'll
Cool.
just carry off from where I left. I have a couple of guesses written down, so I'll talk you
Hmm.
through what I'm thinking.
Okay.
You very early on, I don't think this is it. You said that you told Paul and you told everybody right at the start that you were 50-50 over whether you wanted to be a traitor or faithful. I thought maybe that could be a lie.
Okay.
There were a couple of things you mentioned. I can't really remember all of the details now, but there were a couple of things you said, "Oh, I said this off camera and it didn't make the edit." And I thought, well, that could be
Yeah.
a lie and I would never know it. Like your confusion about Brittany's husband being a carpenter or a chiropractor. I thought that could all be fabricated. Maybe I would never know. That would be quite an elaborate one to tell. And then right towards the end, I wondered if your what you told me about what you'd spent your winnings on. You said you'd had a car called Connie and you were planning a trip to Europe. I thought
Hmm.
maybe that's just you just whipped that up at the last minute because you knew we were coming to an end. So I'm gonna go for um you're you're not you haven't really planned a trip to Europe. I think maybe that's a lie.
No, that is the truth. It's
Oh
all booked in.
no, man.
We will be in Europe in December. No, but you were kind of on the right wavelength when you
Okay.
were talking about things that I've said off camera.
Yes.
And it was early on. I said that they asked us on day one who we trusted the most, and I
You
said
said
Terry.
Terry.
That was a lie.
Ah,
I actually said Brit.
okay. You know what? I'm not surprised that you betrayed me because you're an amazing traitor, but I wasn't a million miles away with one of my guesses, so I'm
No,
happy
no,
with
you were
that.
good. Yep.
I'll take
Um,
it. I'll take it. Bailey,
okay,
do
yeah, yeah,
you
claim it.
any guesses what I may have lied to you about? I'm gonna sort
Mine.
of confess actually. I lied twice because I thought one of my lies wasn't
Oh,
very good, so I told the
oh,
second one.
oh, I was hoping you'd say. Actually, I didn't lie at all. Um, okay. Mine's going to be a very general guess, but it will be in something about the people asking questions. And I reckon it'll be when you said Joe. I'm just gonna go for this. Joe, when you said Joe, who's come on the podcast a few times, asked this question. Was it someone else? Was that a lie?
That was completely true. Absolutely true. Joe is real. Joe will be listening to this. Hi,
Oh,
Joe.
hi, Joe. Sorry, Joe.
I didn't lie about that because I have a couple of times used that as my lie where I've made up a person or I've faked an entire question and said it was from a listener. So I didn't want to do that again. So actually,
Oh,
all of those questions really were from people who had wanted to know all these different things from you. They were very excited you were
oh,
coming on the podcast.
oh.
My my first lie, well, both of them were connected. Both of them were about
Okay.
other castmates of yours who've been on the podcast. I talked about Mike. I
Oh,
said, "Oh, Mike has been on the podcast,"
yeah, I've
but I
listened
made up
to it.
that I said, "Oh, I asked him about this scene when he was talking to you, and he had no memory of it whatsoever." That's not true. He did know what I was talking about, so we did chat about
Oh,
that. And then
listen to that podcast.
I, I lied about Mark. I said that Mark came on the Zoom call wearing a cloak, and that didn't happen. I made that up.
Oh, that was a good one. That was so believable because I could
I,
definitely see Mark doing that.
yeah, I thought that could be a Mark thing, and I could get away with it, and I did. Yay,
Oh, so good. Well done. You win that one.
Bailey. Well, you won as well. You tricked me too. I didn't get you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Uh, thank you so much for joining me on the Trader. I hope it's been okay to relive some of these memories.
Oh, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
And the again, people can find you on Instagram. We'll put the links up, and we will talk again online. Sure, I'm soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Hello, Trader listeners. Thank you for sending me all of your questions for Bailey. I hope you enjoyed our answers. I had a great time chatting with her. She was so up for talking about her whole experience on the show. We had a really great time just a few hours ago, and now the episode is ready for you. As always, you can leave reviews or star ratings wherever you're listening. Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Castbox, Acast, wherever. It all helps the podcast stay high in search results, helps other people find it, and you can keep up to date with the podcast and bits of Traitors news that I don't always get to put on the podcast itself on Instagram, TikTok and YouTube at the Traitors Podcast, or on X at the Traitors Pod. And if you want to get in touch with me or send me any questions about the current series that we're covering or people who are coming on the podcast, you can email me at thetraitorpodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying the podcast and want me to help keep it going, there are costs that I have to pay to make that happen. If you wanted to put in a really small donation as a one-off, you could do that on coffee.com/Matthew Keeley. That's ko-fi.com/Matthew Keeley. I'll be back in just a few days because I am returning to my coverage of The Traitors Canada Season 2. Episode 4 is almost upon us. And this week I will have a different co-host. We have a really exciting person from the world of music who is also a TV lover and huge Traitors fanatic. I can't wait to record with them very soon. Until then, keep us on your Traitors.
At 1-800-Flowers.com, we know that connections are at the heart of being human. Whether celebrating life's joys or comforting during tough times, 1-800-Flowers helps you express what words can't. For nearly 50 years, millions have trusted 1-800-Flowers to deliver thoughtful gifts that help create lasting bonds. Because it's more than just a gift. It's your way of showing you care. Visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST and connect today. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.